Good morning, Wildcats. It's Miss Johnson here. We're going to talk about some portrait making. For these portraits, we're going to use some coffee filters, give us an interesting texture to our work. We're going to have this nice, fine, soft texture. We're going to use some watercolor paints. You can buy these anywhere. They're $1 at the dollar store. However, if you're able to spend maybe $4 or $5, you can get some higher quality ones. They're just going to have bolder color. A simple paintbrush. Some of the paintbrushes that come in these kits are awful. They really are. So you want one that has some nice thick hairs that don't just yank out right away. Unfortunately, a lot of the very inexpensive paintbrushes. I wonder if I have a good example of one. I try to just throw them away as soon as I see them, but what happens is all the hairs pop out and they don't have a lot of hairs to begin with, and then they gouge holes in your paint. So they're kind of destructive. And a permanent marker. It does need to be a permanent marker. The reason being is that if you use this technique with a washable marker, it's going to just bleed into the coffee filter, which is a technique unto itself and can look really cool. But for this project, we want to actually see the lines that we make. Again, we're going to be making some portraits for Black History Month of notable Black Americans, some that you'll certainly recognize because you've known them from the history books. I'm going to try to involve some modern day portraits, some people that you admire that are still living. For this one, I chose a former president because it's a really easy to recognize face. To make this former president, I used a template. So I'm going to have a lot of these printed out. You can print them out at home. You're looking for black and white drawings. So if you would like to go into a search engine, look up black and white, whoever you're looking for, drawings. So this would be black and white Obama drawings. You want to make sure that they're high contrast because we're looking for the lightest and the darkest values. If you don't find one exactly like this, you know, there are some that aren't quite as contrasted, like this drawing of Maya Angelou that I'm going to use in my example. And as long as you can see those nice black lines through your coffee filter, that's just fine. Let's get started. I have Maya right in front of me, and I'm going to spread my coffee filter over her face. You'll notice that when I push down, I can see pretty well, but when I lift it up, I can't so much. So this is why it's going to take some patience, some skills and observation. If you want, you can use some very light tape and tape it down. In the past, my friends, I've had some problems with getting the tape back off of the filter, and it has destroyed student work. That's why I don't tape mine. But if that's what you need to do what you need to do. It could also be possible maybe to fold down the portrait. We're going to use it and use maybe a paper clip or a binder clip to keep it in place. Okay, so you do whatever you need to do to make sure that your drawing more or less stays put. You center it where you think it looks good. I think it looks pretty cool there. I caught part of her earring. I caught the other earring. I caught part of her scarf. Let's see, what if I centered it on this earring? How would that look? Okay, I dig that, but I think I'd rather have a little bit of her scarf, so I'm going to center mine right here, and I'm going to get started with some simple outlining. So holding it nice and firm where I want to draw, I'm going to start by outlining some of these simple shapes, keeping one hand on my work so it doesn't go all over the place. Capturing her hairline here. You'll see me sometimes use different directions with my markers. I don't always go in one direction. Often it's just easier to capture a line if you try different side-to-side motions. You don't have to always follow the line without ever picking it up in the same motion. It doesn't always work out. Okay, so have a lot of those simple features already captured. If you deviate from the line, that's okay. You're the artist. You are the artist. So even though you're basing it off of someone else's image, someone else's art, any changes you make may not only be necessary, but they make your work special. So do not be dismayed with small differences between your art and the artist that you're using as a template. Think of it more as inspiration than pure copy work. You don't want to worry too much about pure copy work, and that's again when you trace exactly the way someone else has done it and you don't do anything different. It's okay if it's different. Okay, so to leave this space, I didn't draw a circle. I actually just kind of filled in color around it, leaving a bigger space than I knew I needed, because you know how markers do. Sometimes they're a little thicker than you intend, and once you make a mark, you can't take it back. Markers are a one-way street. So as you work on finding the face, you're focusing on only the darkest values. Just like we studied with values and contrast, you want your work to stand out. So if I had used a face more like this one of Michelle Obama, I would have to focus on her dark eyebrows, her dark eyes, the space beneath her nose, her hair, the space between her hands and her face. Those darker values are really what I want to become black, and the rest I would leave white. So I think I captured most of the lines. Here she is. But what if I didn't? I would just take my time, patient artist, patience, and just find out where those lines are. Ah, I did not color in her hair. I want to do that. Marker is running a little skimpy here. I'll go grab another. Okay, using that new marker. We are going to be using some watercolor paint to color this up. Add some really pretty hues. So if there is a little space in your black, just consider it part of your art. There is nothing wrong with your art deviating from the template. You're unique, and everything that you make is. So just try to make your peace with that young, guys. You're all special, and you're not going to be the same. You know, when I was young, I did not think that way. I really wanted to be more like other people. It bothered me to stand out, and so I tried to make my art look the way other people wanted it to look. But the question you should ask yourself is, 1, what do I want? And 2, how can I make peace with things as they are? Because things are what they are. Yeah, I like that a little bit more. Let's see. I think I missed part of her neck. Did you see that, guys? I'm going to go find it again. I should have been a little bit more patient with this part to make sure I captured all my lines. Did I get them, my friends? I think so. Let's take a look here. Yeah, I think so. I think I got them. So for this portion of your project, you want to continue to have scrap paper beneath you. I'm going to maybe go back to this just because I got it around. You want paper beneath you because the watercolor paint is, you guessed it, water-based. You want to make sure that all this water saturates the coffee filter, doesn't just end up all over your table. So you got an automatic placemat. It's time to add colors 2 ways. You can add water first. See how wet that is? It's pretty much sticking to my paper. And then with side-to-side strokes, you could use your wet brush. Remember, never dripping, simply wet. Pick up the color in your palette, and you can dab it onto the coffee filter. That is called wet on wet, because we started with wet and then we added the color. So it's called wet on wet. If you don't want to do wet on wet, that's fine. You can simply go through and add the color. Now, some of my students have decided that, yeah, I want my colors to be distinct. And you see some of them have gone through and tried to make colors like real life colors. I like the random color look, but this is your art, so you decide. Would you like to use like real skin tones, human colors, colors that are logical, or would you like to blur surprising colors? They may not be very logical, but you think they look good. It's really up to the artist. I'm going to use a little reddish tone here. And my brush is a bit dirty. My colors aren't picking up so great, but kind of just doing the best I can there. This is also why I suggest just spending just a little bit more money on your palette. With this Crayola, or maybe it's a Crazart palette, I'm really not too impressed with the color quality here. You probably won't be either. So it's really fun for practicing, it's good for learning, but as you start to care more about what you make, you want to invest just a little bit more in the quality of your paint. Just a little bit more. It's going to make a big difference in how your finished products are. Okay. Again, you can do wet on wet. I'm going to do that here because it's fast, y'all. I think wet on wet is nice and fast. I love the way the colors just kind of spread out, unbidden, and they blur together. They don't need much encouragement to do that. And you can even add color to other spots. Now, once it's wet like this, you don't want to keep stroking side to side. You're going to stroke a hole right into whatever it is you're painting on. If you just continue side to side, you want to switch it up a little bit and dab. I think dabbing with this coffee filter is the best way to add color. Just nice, gentle dabs. And I'm sticking in the purple, red, and blue range. I'm not impressed with this purple. You probably won't be either. But I get what I get. I don't make it fit. I recommend the same to you. Life does not always offer us ideal circumstances. Still, we persist. For instance, Maya Angelou did not have some ideal circumstances in her life. Her home life was not as safe and secure as is ideal, but she persisted. She became world renowned in her field of poetry and writing. She traveled the whole world, settling for times in different countries, like several West African countries. Her perspective has been so powerful and unique that her poetry has offered many people hope, peace, and insight. Many people have been inspired by her work. And again, her circumstances were not ideal. She didn't have the perfect, cozy, two-parent household where she knew what to expect day in and day out. She had a lot of uncertainty. But it was some of those uncertainties that made her such a powerful voice. Just like in your art, often it's not being in absolute control which makes your art so beautiful. Sometimes it's what you didn't expect to happen that makes it special, and that also makes it inspiring for other people when they see it. Okay, so I had to go with a slight purplish tone for her mouth. And now that I have a lot of color, I'm just going to add some on top. I left the area of her eyes a little wider. That's up to you. That's up to you. Add some redness around them. But I left that little white mark in the middle. I tried to leave some of that there. And I'm attempting to darken some of the areas which nature has darkened, like underneath her nose, around her cheeks. And if you don't like that so much, you can always add a tiny bit more water. This is a coffee filter, so it will soak in water. Okay, so once you've filled in your filter, give your brush a nice rinse, put it to the side. I'm going to put my paint to the side and let it dry just a little bit. I'm going to show you what we got. That one's actually quite pretty. And this is more or less what the finished work is. It does dry quite a bit lighter, So once it's dried, you're going to be able to see a lot of the beautiful light colors that you worked on. So I hope you enjoy making these portraits. I hope you find something in someone that you admire, or at least that you enjoy making. This technique can be used with lines, colors, shapes, or anything that you're fascinated by. So please don't limit this project to 1 month of the year. Try creating some of your flowers, try a drawing of your home, try your dog, anything that interests you. I'll see you next time, amazing artists. Until then.